Welcome to F1 on the Rocks. Sit back and pour up your favorite drink. Hey, we're not the ones behind the wheel.
Hello and welcome back to F1 on the Rocks. My name is Brian Dower. I'm here with my buddy Will Smith.
What up?
What is up, Will? And today we got a shorty for you all. We're walking through the Mexico Grand Prix and all the tire strategy that we've been missing here all season. Verstappen seems uncatchable in Mexico City as he went from pole to P1, breaking records left and right. Before we roll into all of that, let's catch up with Will. What is going on, man? Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to you too, sir. Yeah, the fun of Halloween changes when you go from being like a teenage boy who's getting into shit they shouldn't get into to following around your toddler as they run from house to house. Yeah, it was. It was a good Halloween. How about yours?
Yeah, good stuff, man. It was we had a good time. We got good weather. My parents came over and came with us, which was nice.
Cool.
Didn't bring enough beers on the walk, unfortunately, but probably not the worst mistake I've ever made.
Yeah, the old wagon and cooler is the way to go for the longer Halloween adventures. Plus, as your girls get older, you're gonna probably need to have more beers for the trip. So
exactly.
A note for the chief strategist in the Dower household for next week.
That is not me. So. What are you thinking tonight?
Did I just get myself in trouble with Bridget?
No.
Okay. I'm one race late, but I went with a margarita, a little no salt margarita. Yeah.
Very nice. I'm doing the old faithful Tito's on the rocks.
Damn, you're good. Yeah. So my Vegas trip was fun. I started each of my days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with a double Tito's and soda with lemon at 9 a.m. Like that was the only way that I could save myself from the damage done the night before.
That's the way to do it, man.
It was good. Only lost like $200, so I feel like that's a win by Vegas standards.
Absolutely.
Had a good time though. We got into, you know what the best part about Vegas for me is the food, man. Like we ate some really good food. Din Tai Fung. We went to Momofuku. I mean, just like you name it, there's a chef with his own 12 restaurants there. You got to go. You just got to go.
That's awesome.
Yep. Well, I am up again this week. I self-proclaimed last week as a home run, and now this week I'm a little bit concerned. But for listeners who maybe have just joined us for the first time on this episode, we like to do this thing called the One Breath Race Review. And that is where I'm going to cram in a recap of the entirety of the race in one breath to the best of my ability. And usually we go for some comedic value along with that. We'll see how that flies today. I think I outdid myself last week. So, all right.
Last week was phenomenal. This week, just there's been a lot less prep. So you've got a little bit of a handicap to work with here. So
and a tongue twister, So all right, here we go.
Sure. All right.
One breath race review. It was a Mercedes sandwich at race start with Ferrari starting 5 and 7. Forget what you know about the first corner in Mexico City. We somehow avoided a mass collision, leaving Max in a position to get gone like everyone else's tires. Gasly hat danced with Aston Martin all race long. Danny Rick stayed salty and made moves next to and eventually into Yuki. 10 seconds for you. Alonso's car died and Max picked up his 4th in Mexico. Hamilton held on for second with Perez celebrating his 2nd podium in a home race.
Bam. That was impressive, man. We weren't struggling at all either. You were controlling your breath there pretty nicely.
I think I pulled that one off. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and listen to the recording. I don't think I had an extra breath in there, but we'll see.
That was nice.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well done. Let's get into it. That starts us off right, man. That's when we start with a good one breath, everything's smooth from there.
It just falls into place. Yeah.
Absolutely. So speaking of the start, you really talked up the start on last week's episode, man.
Yeah, I hyped it. I hyped it up so hard. I was like, we're going to see 20 cars crash. And none of that happened. I mean, we got 4 wide, we saw cars kind of peeking out from behind other cars trying to make a move, but it wasn't as eventful as we thought. What did you think about the start? How did it look to you?
Yeah, it was interesting because obviously I know we're going to get into some tires, but Verstappen started on the softs and he was obviously in pole. So right off the bat, I actually heard Hamilton after the race basically say when we saw him take the tire blankets off of Max on the grid and he had softs on, basically we knew we had no chance because all season long. If Max is leading, into turn one, it's over. Essentially. So that's what we had, unfortunately, but the start was cool. I love the race down to turn one at this track. It's so long. The slipstream is so powerful. And when they kind of pop in and out from in front of and behind each other and like slide back in with like 2 inches of buffer there between like front wing and the back tires, like, I don't know, it's just impressive. So there was a lot of that going on down into turn one. Not a whole hell of a lot happened in terms of position changes. Lando lost a couple spots, but yeah, it wasn't wild, but it was still entertaining for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it always kicks off like it's just such a sprint to that corner. But yeah, I agree. The poking from behind, right? Like it's like you're at the grocery store behind like an 80-year-old, and you're just like, I just need to get the milk and get the fuck out of here. And you're like, go left, and she goes left, and you go right, and she goes right. And you're like, oh, yeah. No, what was weird for me though was like almost immediately the broadcast and what in what a lot of cases the team strategist they kind of felt like they were a little clueless on like when and how drivers needed to do things in this race. And obviously that's not part of the start, but you got that vibe right away. Like even with your comment with Hamilton's, like Mercedes didn't know how to react if they had softs on. I feel like there should have been a bit of a plan there. It's like when you see the softs, we're going to roll with this plan moving forward. So, but this race, we kind of made homage to it in the One Breath race review, was a lot of tire strategy. I mean, probably more than we've seen in 5-6 races for the most part.
Sure. Yeah.
So, there were all 3 tires were used by teams in this race. Do you think we're going to see this more?
I don't think so. I think this was kind of an anomaly. So they brought the C2, 3, and 4. So they brought the medium range. And Pirelli had everyone convinced it was going to be a 2-stop. Like that was all the strategy pre-race. And honestly, I think most teams started that race planning to do a 2-stop. Like Red Bull doesn't start on soft tires if they're only going to stop one
time, right?
Yeah. But there was just no deg. And it's interesting that, I mean, I guess it was the first time they have these new 18-inch tires here. So that's, obviously a different variable, but it's just interesting to me that none of the teams, have those learnings from previous years, because they were saying, hey, the tires didn't degrade like we thought they would because, this track surface isn't very abrasive. Like it's not real grippy and grabby like some of the others are. So the deg isn't high. Well, it's like they didn't resurface it. It's been the same fucking surface for the last 10 years or whatever.
Right.
Like, why was it a surprise that the surface wasn't abrasive? I don't know, but it was interesting. So everybody thought it was going to be a 2-stop, basically ended up being a 1-stop, and was very, very interesting that the best strategy was medium soft, which like you're not going to see anywhere except like Monaco or something.
Yeah. And or at a lower team who's got nothing to lose at this point in the season by kind of throwing a curveball at people. I think it was interesting to hear some of the radio calls for Red Bull where they're really crushing, really pushing, and you're getting a message that's lift and coast, because they were even with the lead and even with where they were in the race, the lead team was still like hesitant on the idea that those tires might burn out faster than they wanted them to. So they're, and instead of pushing through those corners, lift and coast. So the deg, I think obviously you pointed out, wasn't there the way that we thought it was going to be. Part of me wonders if if this has something to do with the altitude and the way that the cars have downforce on the track. But I mean, that's way above my scientific mind and ability to comprehend. So
yeah. And I think a lot of the lift and coast, obviously it was tires, but I think a lot of it was on, heating issues with the engine. Like the engine are working with less oxygen. The turbos are working harder and spinning faster. And that was a big problem, obviously, that Ferrari had. So I think a lot of it was that, like, Max, you're out in front by 10 seconds. Like, take it easy, man. We don't need a failure.
No need to slide off into a corner. Yeah, for sure. Do you think that we should have like more 2-stop races? Like, is it getting to the point where people need that extra level of like engagement in what's happening in the race, especially if you've got someone so far out and like in the lead?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. If every race could be a 2-stop race, F1 is going to be so much more fun to watch. Like this race was good. It was a good race. It was fun. There was some strategy involved. It was 71 laps. Like if you're not like a hardcore F1 fan, like you and I are, you're probably not sitting through 71 laps of that yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. Or Sunday. So
Yeah.
I think 2 stoppers, and the tough thing is you can't just say like, all right, you need to stop twice. It's got to be something like the tires just need to degrade more, or they need to get a little more risky with the tire, selections or whatever. Maybe
Sure.
you say you do each compound in a race. I don't know, but I think 2 stoppers for sure, because it keeps you invested. Like, hey, I know there's only 20 laps left, but this guy's going to stop again. He's going to throw on the softs, and how much can he make up coming back? And I love the 2 stoppers.
It gets to be more of a chess game as opposed to just someone, driving a car very fast, which I think is one of the things that I've always really loved about Formula One. We'll talk more about tires towards the end, because there's some stuff that's coming up in 2023 and 2024 that make a big difference. In terms of tire strategy, who do you think did it better, Red Bull or Mercedes?
Red Bull, if Merc went medium soft instead of medium hard, they would have nailed it, right? Because we saw, and I know we're going to get into him too. Finally, I got a freaking smile on my face for Danny Rick, but he went medium soft and was just a fucking rocket ship at the end of that race.
Yep.
So Red Bull did it right, going soft medium. If Merc went medium soft and extended those mediums, I think they could have hit a home run. And the crazy thing is, George Russell, I know I shit on George a lot, but he was spot on. He was to the point where he was almost on the radio like, fuck you guys, I'm coming in for soft tires, or, let me extend this, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
But he hated those hards. He basically like was trying to convince them he had a puncture. He's like, I think I got a puncture. They're like, no, you're good. He's like, no, I want to come in and get off these hards.
Yeah, George, we can see the numbers.
Yeah, like and the crazy thing is, especially with George, like the Mercs were on the same exact strategy. And like Hamilton could lose second place to Perez if they tried something with Hamilton, but George is in fourth. He's going to be in fourth regardless of what they do with his strategy. Right. If he says the hards suck after 15 laps or 20 laps or whatever, bring him in on the softs. And, hindsight's 2020, obviously, but I think that could have been fun.
Well, it's the thing that you have to take away from this is that even with George's like success early in the season and the fact that he's backing him up, he still isn't going to get what he wants if the team has a strategy set and that's the route they're going to go, which is, I think that's one of those things where you get that earlier career type driver as opposed to like a Vettel or Alonso who's like, no, seriously, I'm coming in to change these tires, where Russell's like, okay, fine. But yeah, it was one of those things where I thought for sure that Red Bull had made the right decisions. I saw some controversial stuff on Reddit with Russell where they were like, hey, controversial opinion. I think even if he put the softs on, he still wouldn't have made up the ground that he needed to. So, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
So what we also saw was Aston Martin with some tire difficulties, a whole lot of complaining both between Stroll and Vettel about not having grip. And, it doesn't bode extremely well for next year with Alonso's jump to Aston Martin. But it makes you wonder, like, does that have to do with downforce, or is it just like for some reason the way that the car's set up, it just doesn't do well with these new 18-inch Pirellis? Like, I don't know, but they spend a lot of time defending positions. Like between Vettel and Stroll, they spend a lot of time fighting people. Did you catch a couple of those tangos?
Yeah, for sure. And it was interesting because the Aston has gotten better and better every race. So it was really surprising to see that. And maybe it's just they can't just tack on the downforce like everyone else can because of the thin air. Everyone's on like Monaco downforce just to get as much as they can. And maybe they just don't have that ability. I don't know what the deal with that was. But yeah, I mean, they were playing defense all day. And gosh, after 71 laps of that, that's got to be exhausting.
Well, they ended up, at least Stroll ended up next to Gasly in a bit of a tangle where there was some bumping going on. I think FIA sat on it for a lap and came back with like a 5-second penalty. And it was like, okay, cool. I don't know like where we are in the whole scheme of things with the way that FIA expected some of the penalties to be handled, but we've got time penalties and we're supposed to have some drive-through penalties. We've seen like exponentially more time penalties this season than we have anything in the drive-through realm. I guess my question to you is, why are we not getting anything from AlphaTauri telling Gasly to give back a position and just avoid the time penalty when he could easily give it back and take it a corner later and not have like a full 5-second penalty at the end of the race?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and I think it just differs by each scenario. So I was thinking that to myself when it happened, right? Because you see Gasly force him off, and immediately you think like, all right, Gasly's got to give that position back. But then a half lap later, I want to say it was maybe Albon, then was right on the back of Stroll. So Gasly is probably thinking to himself, like, I can't give this position back to Stroll, or I'm also going to lose it to Gasly. And instead, just say, fuck it, I'm just going down the road. I know I'm going to get a 5-second penalty. Let me see if I can make it up. But it is interesting. You would think that the teams at this point, and maybe not because it's the FIA, but at this point they have at least a solid understanding of, okay, if we don't give it back, we're getting a penalty. Or maybe AlphaTauri thought the exact thing we're talking about now. Like, hey, Albon's going to clip him if he tries to give it back. Fuck it.
Lesser of two evils, I guess, at that point.
I don't
is
know.
kind of what you're saying. Yeah, it's tough because you'd think, like, for me, my knee jerk is like, let me just give it back right now, like immediately. I'll just slide back in behind him, and then crush, and try and pass him again. Because obviously, if you could pass him there, you can pass him probably somewhere else with the DRS.
Right.
Do you think that, like, the way that this penalty system is working, that we're ever going to see a team take accountability, or do you think that they'd rather just take the penalty at this point and then suffer the post-race consequences? I mean, it's not really affecting them.
Yeah.
As we'll talk about here in a second, but
yeah, I mean, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Like last year and in years past, the race director would say, give that place back. And now this year they're leaving it up to the team. And then whatever the team decides, then they give a penalty, after whatever the team has decided to do on their own, which I think is kind of fucked up. Like, hey, ref, I'll decide if I should do the right thing here or not. And then if I don't, then you can give me a penalty. Like, just tell me the fucking rule as soon as it happens. Like, the race director sees that, gets on the horn to AlphaTauri and says, give it back or you're going to get a 5-second penalty.
That's preferred. Like, for me, that's just preferred.
Right.
For one other main reason. The teams have a shit ton of strategy that they're already dealing with. Why are you going to lob into their lap the decision as to whether they should give something back or maybe potentially face a penalty depending on fucking what you had for breakfast today, FIA?
Right.
I don't know why
and
that's
which race director's in.
Exactly. I mean, we're lucky that they stopped rotating the stewards, but still, I think, like, at the end of the day, it's not going to be a thing where they're going to take accountability, because look at what's even happening with just the way that the rules were for the budget cap. Like, no one's going to straight up be like, we broke that rule. Let me fix that for you real quick. It's going to be like, did we break that rule? Show us how, or tell us what we need to do, so yeah, anyways, that wasn't the only penalty that we saw. We saw also a 10-second penalty.
We did.
For Mr. Danny Rick. What do you think about that awesome pass maneuver that he did there down in the final couple corners?
That was not his best move I've ever seen. But I'm a Danny Rick fan, so I got to try to defend him a little bit.
All right, go on.
It was definitely his fault.
Yep.
After I was listening to his interview, and he was posing it like, hey, I wasn't trying to pass him there. I was just trying to make him stay a little bit more on the outside, so he compromises his exit. I get a better exit and get to pass him. And it's like, okay, fine, but like, that's
he
not
didn't know
happened.
you were there. Yeah. He didn't know you
so
were
like,
there.
if I've got to put a percentage on it, I'll put it like 80% Danny Rick's fault, maybe 75%. Because like Yuki, I think if it were somebody who's been in F1 for 3 or 4 years and they see, okay, I've got Danny Rick behind me, and they're going to be looking in their mirrors maybe a little more than Yuki was, because Yuki was just like, fuck it, turn it in. Like, I don't care if you're here or not. And to Yuki's defense, Danny put it in late. Like, he put it in very late.
Yeah.
But I think a better, more experienced driver maybe would have been like, okay, maybe I will, leave a little room here and not end my fucking race.
Yeah.
Because that's what, is the case.
Yeah. I kind of, in my head, I can see Hamilton doing something along those lines, like conceding that line just enough outside of that corner to pull back in and push Danny back out again.
Right.
But still, nonetheless, like when you see it happen, you're like, wow, he just kind of drove right into Yuki there. Like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
But yeah, the 10-second penalty. So
Didn't affect him one bit. He was flying, man.
he like you said, that medium soft strategy really paid off for him. Nice to see him with a race finish in the 7th position.
Oh my gosh.
Feels
Best of the
like
rest.
uncharted territory for him,
Yeah.
like
Best of the rest. Did you see him do the finger gun?
no, I didn't. I missed
Dude,
it.
it was ridiculous.
Oh.
It was like really bad because like Danny, you like have been awful for 2 years. Like it's not 2016 right now. But anyway, he's on the start finish straight and he's coming up behind Ocon, and he takes his right hand off the wheel and does one of these like a pew while he's driving, like in his slipstream, and then passes him into turn one. It's like, what are you doing, man?
He's
That's
having
just Danny Rick.
fun.
He's just
He's
exactly.
having fun.
Yep.
Here's the okay. So we can't go too far down this rabbit hole, but here's the thing. It makes you wonder why he's having this much fun still. Like if he knows something we don't know, but also too, his crash makes me wonder if it's just like, I'm going to become a reserve driver and I don't have to care about racing anybody anymore.
Exactly.
I'm just going to be testing. He's like, I can just drive an open track. Fuck you guys. I win this one. Well, we got a couple podiums for Red Bull. Perez, one thing that's always fun to see in Mexico when Perez ends up on the podium is the like absolute shit show of a party that his dad and family throw for him, like all over the racetrack. I mean, jumping up and down, like throwing their own confetti out of their pockets. Like, I don't know where they pull that shit from. But it's nice to see like how invested his family is in
it's awesome.
Success.
There was a really cool article on the Players Tribune. I don't know if you've ever read any of those articles, but it's like a website. It's been around forever. And yeah, an NFL player will write like a long blog article or whatever. And Checo wrote one that came out last week. It was really good. It's a long read, but it's definitely worth the read. And it's about like him cold calling when he was like 10 in Mexico, like 1-800-collect to Europe to try to get a drive. And, then his mom saw the phone bill and cut him off. And it was really, really cool.
It's a weird dichotomy of this ritzy, glamorous sport and the grind and the hustle that that people are so used to like claiming to be victim to. Like, I really had to like push hard to get to this point.
Right.
And it's like a weird thing when you hear someone say that, especially about F1 with just the millions of dollars that's spent just to do the sport to begin with. But I think that's what makes those moments with Perez and his family so much more like valuable to see, because it's like they probably went through some really difficult times just to get him into a car. Like the fact that they're even able to stand on the track and celebrate, 2 wins 2 years in a row in his home country. That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it was the same exact podium as last year.
Yeah, 3rd place. Yep.
Yeah, Max Lewis Checo.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. On to Max. Yeah, on to Max. So this was crazy. You put this in here, but I'm going to say it because I'm already talking.
Take it.
Except for the 2 virtual safety car laps, Verstappen did a 122 dot something every single lap of the race after his pit stop for mediums until the checkered flag. So he did like 45 plus laps within the same second every single lap
on 2 different tires.
That's crazy.
It's insane.
Damn, that's nuts.
It just speaks to, again, like, I wish the guy that left us the Hamilton review would listen to the last 10 episodes as we, chant Max's name over and over again. Right. But like, it just goes to show how like much of a different level he's on and has been for almost the entirety of the season. Like, the fact of the matter is, sure, the car is helping him get here, but the car doesn't just do 122s. Like, you've got to make very, very few mistakes in every corner of a very corner filled track for 71, not 71 laps, but for a lot of laps,
right,
to pull that off. That's a pretty remarkable stat to have coming out of Mexico. So
yeah, very, very impressive. And then the big one that he broke was 14 wins in a season, beating Seb and Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, we called that one, kind of saw that one coming last week. Schumacher achieved his 13 wins in an 18 race season. Vettel scored his in a 19 race season, and Verstappen had 14, by the 21st race of the year. So what I'm seeing now is, and I'm going to take a little bit of credit for this because there's a potential chance that I might have been the origination point of this stat. So I'm going to tee you up for Twitter so that way you can clip this and post it later. Okay. A race percentage as a winner of the largest number of races in a season based on the total number of races in a season. That's what I wanted to know, right? Because that's really where we've increased the number of races in a season. So when Schumacher got 13 wins out of an 18 race season, he took 72.2% of the total races and won them. Vettel took 68.4%, and Max is currently only at 66.6%. So even with this record, and even though he has won more races than them in one season, from a percentage standpoint, he has not yet actually beat what I would say he has not yet actually beat Vettel and Schumacher in this type of stat. So what we're left with then is an opportunity for Max to maybe put in another one, maybe two more wins, set the record from a percentage level and from a number of races per season. And I thought it was cool because Vettel came out and was like, I have a challenge for Max. Do it. Like go raise the bar even higher. Like, and that's a pretty cool thing to hear happen, but yeah,
for sure. That's awesome. But he is not going to beat, in terms of a percentage, even if he wins the next two, Alberto Ascari. There was only 8 races in the season, so nobody really gives a shit, but
wait,
he won six out of 8 in like 1950 something, 51, 52. Right. So it doesn't count. But
no, but let's get that in here and let's get that. I'll make the graphic and let's get this posted because this is a cool stat. Yeah, for sure. In continuance of my normal new thing that I just decided that I wanted to start doing, we've got the dope ass helmet of the week. I'll throw it here. It was Seb's helmet. Did you see it?
I did. It was awesome. I've been looking for helmets just because of your new segment.
I hope everybody, I hope our listeners do that too. Like, go look at the helmets. They're cool. Like, it's obvious that the drivers care, but someone is in charge of making sure that they look good. So anyways, go out, take a look, do a quick look for Seb's helmet for Mexico City. On the side, on like the cheekbone, it says Danke Didi, which Didi is short as a short nickname for Dietrich Mateschitz, which was the gentleman who passed away and was the origination of the Red Bull team. And so it was an actual Red Bull helmet design that he was racing in an Aston Martin, which I thought was kind of cool because it was like, hey man, you do you, like, you know, we trust. And so that tribute to Didi, I think, was really, really cool. It shows that Vettel still, again, here I am, 2 races till the end of the season. His heart is in the place that it needs to be as he kind of departs from racing Formula One. And that's really cool.
Yeah. Seb's the man.
He is the man. Daddy Seb. He's only 35 years old though.
Yeah, which is crazy.
I know. I called him Daddy Seb the other day and Bailey was like, why are you saying that? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, how old is he? I was like, I think he's like 38. She was like, nope, he's 35. And I was like, oh, he's the same age as me. I can't call someone the same age as me Daddy Seb. That's weird.
It's the homeless look that makes him look older, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And also, like, the helmet has probably worn down all of his hairline over the years.
Yeah, exactly.
F1 anomalies here with Reddit on the Rocks. Tinfoil hat. Here you have it. I found this one in the deep, dark holes of Reddit rabbit hole, and I will link it in the podcast description. There are only 2 races left for a British flag to appear on the top step of a podium this year. Want to know why that's an important statistic?
Why?
Since 1953, it's been a fixture on the top step of the podium at least one time in a year for either a driver or a constructor. It's made at least one appearance every single year since 1953.
That is pretty damn cool.
That's a cool stat. That's a really cool stat.
That is a stat. I listen to and read a lot of F1 bullshit. I have never heard that before. And that is the fucking stat of the day for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We'll link the Reddit post so you guys can go and give this guy credit. But I thought it was really interesting because if you think about it, we've been so focused on the guy, right? Like Hamilton getting that podium and you know, maintaining his record that we almost lost sight of this longer term transactional, like, no, it's bigger than Lewis, right? That's Sir Lewis, and his Sir came from, the flag that he represents when he jumps in the car. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. What's going on in the news? We got some official rulings, we'll call it, right?
Yeah, budget cap breakdown. Did you see what the actual fines were?
I did. So they're getting, correct me if I'm wrong, they're getting a $7 million fine.
Yep.
A 10% reduction in development time. Is that 10% wind tunnel?
I will clarify. I'll clarify.
I think it's 10% reduction in wind tunnel time or CFD time. I can't remember. Maybe it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
For the budget cap breach.
Yep.
And supposedly, according to Christian Horner, he said this 10% reduction is going to be worth a quarter second to a half second a lap.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how one calculates that. Seems like bullshit to me. If I know Christian Horner, it's like, oh my gosh. So when we win next year, it's just even more of a tremendous accomplishment because we got fucked out of 10%. I'm sure 10% is a legitimate hindrance to the car's development. Half a second a lap?
Yeah, I don't think so. He needed a headline. He needed a headline.
Right.
There were two important things that I pulled out of this, though. The first one being that FIA acknowledged if a tax credit had been applied correctly, it would have only been about 0.4 million, or sorry, 0.5 million in overspend. So I don't know. I don't know, like, if maybe that was where the Red Bull team was coming from, legally speaking, like, hey guys, like, we just missed a tax credit. If we had the tax credit in properly, it was a $500,000. Like, you guys gonna rake us over the coals for that? To your point, though, the other, I think, secondary factor on this was that reduction in 10% was used to calculate the team's development time for next year. So with the current constructors champions set to receive 70% of the current limit, that stands for about like 40 runs a week. Like, they're getting 40 runs a week in the wind tunnel as part of a sliding scale to give those at the bottom of the champions additional development time. So this penalty means that Red Bull is due to have that number cut to 63% over the next 10 months. I don't know, like, rough math, but I'm going to guess that that's maybe like 35 runs a week now. So they're losing like 5 runs a week. Right. One maybe could argue, to your point, that 5 runs a week does equate to a quarter or a half a second, but I don't know about that. I feel like we've got enough data with these current actual races that it'd be one thing if this was happening going into this new year, but it's not. Like, we know how the cars are performing on the track. So
yeah, exactly. So the car is already the fastest car, right? Mercedes might come next year with a badass car that they pour their heart and soul into, and it still might not be as fast as last year's Red Bull or this current year's Red Bull. So, like, sure, they're getting a reduction, but they still have the fastest car. I don't know. I wish it were a little bit harsher. Now that I see it was only $500,000, okay, maybe this is fair.
Yeah.
But 10% reduction doesn't seem that drastic.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the situations where we can actually say time will tell, and we can hold true to that for next season when we probably open up the season with all the drama that's occurred in between it. In other driver news, we've got Stoffel Van Dorn taking a jump from Mercedes bench over to Aston's team reserve bench. He's set to sit next to Felipe Drugovich, and that leaves Mercedes without a reserve driver. Who's going to fill that spot?
Isn't that interesting?
I wonder why Danny Rick was shooting pistols over there.
Raniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
But I like Stoffel Van Dorn. I'm a fan of his. He was Alonso's teammate. Now he's going to be Alonso's reserve driver. I'm sure they've got a relationship. But I don't know if you ever watched, it's on Netflix, I think. There's like a 1-season McLaren documentary that's got Stoffel Van Dorn in it.
I haven't seen it. No.
Yeah, it's worth watching. It's cool. It's like 6 episodes or something. But our friend, I don't know if you've ever followed Matt Bishop. He's the Aston, I don't know his title, but he like runs all their PR. I think Aston's PR, Matt Bishop. He's an awesome follow on Twitter. But he was at McLaren when Van Dorn was there. So he put a nice tweet out that I saw, like, worked with Stoffel before. He's a great guy, yada, yada, yada. So it'll be cool. that F1 world seems pretty small with, all these people just kind of going to different teams and doing that whole thing.
But the running trend with Aston Martin seems to be, with the exception of Lance Stroll, a whole lot of seniority, leadership, and experience.
Yeah.
Which, one could be like, well, yeah, but all the things are changing in the rules, and it's like, yeah, but the science is still there. Like, if you can make a fast car once, you can make a fast car again. So
Right.
I'll be curious. Like, part of me wonders if like Alonso was like, hey, I'll give you all the good feedback I can give you on this car, so we can keep pushing it forward. But also bring my boy Van Dorn over, so we can do this together, because he's going to give you just as good feedback as I can. He might even give you better feedback than Lance does. I don't know.
Yeah,
What if that was the tagline? I was like, bring him in because he's going to know how to tell you about this car better than Lance would. Okay, fine. I'll keep Lance in the seat, but we'll get the feedback from Stoffel. I made reference to it earlier, but we got some tire news. So the tire news is this. There was a change that the maximum temperature of the tire blankets was going to drop every year leading into 2024, at which point we're going to stop using tire blankets. Which, did you know, my IndyCar fan, that IndyCar does not use tire blankets?
I did not know that. I knew F2 didn't, but I didn't know IndyCar didn't. Isn't that
So
interesting?
basically what the plan was is that last year they were down to 90. This year they were going to drop down to 70 degrees Celsius as a maximum temperature that could be used on a tire blanket. And then next year they were going to drop down to 50 degrees Celsius. That is the maximum they could use. So they were kind of like, I guess, essentially weaning themselves off the tire blankets.
Right.
The drivers got pissy. They looked at some race data, and what they realized is that like there's not really any major benefit to dropping from 70 Celsius down to 50 Celsius next year. Especially because the tire compounds are going to change. The way that Pirelli makes tires in 2024 is going to completely change. So they're like, you know what? Keep your 70 degrees Celsius. It's not the end of the world. Like, we'll be fine. Let's move on from this. So FIA hearing the drivers and the teams kind of say like, let's just not do this. And that's kind of nice, I guess. Hopefully it pans out.
That's interesting. I wonder if they'll eventually just ditch the idea to do no tire blankets as well, which would be a bummer. I'd love to see no tire blankets.
No, that's what's scheduled for 2024.
Right, but I'm saying, like, is this the first step to the drivers eventually just getting their way and the FIA being like, fine, fuck it, you can keep your tire blankets?
I don't know, though. I mean, if they're going to go with no blankets in 2024 and a completely new set of tires, then there must be something that like, there has to be a reason why they're like saying we're just going to go no tire blankets in 2024 if there's technology for those tires. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Be interesting.
Well, that takes us through all of the normal news. We are now looking into Brazil, Sao Paulo.
Brazil at Interlagos. Tell us a little bit about Interlagos, Will.
I did my research, Mr. Dower. The first Grand Prix occurred in 1973. The current number of laps, just like Mexico, is 71. I found that kind of interesting.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, 71 felt long, though. I would almost have rather seen like 63 feels like the right number for these two races, but who am I to say?
Well, it's all just based off distance, right? So it's a short track. This one is especially a quick lap with they've got a huge long straight, two big DRS straights, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like Interlagos. It's a fun one.
It'll be interesting to see how the lap records hold up. Valtteri has a fastest lap record from 2018, 1 minute, 10 seconds. We with Max doing 122s last week. It's like, are we going to even get anywhere close to 110 in this new car? Like, I don't know.
Right.
But we shall see what happens there. A couple of key track features for you. The first one is banked corners. For some of those IndyCar fans out there, for some of those NASCAR fans out there, you're going to get some banks in the corners at the end. You've got the coveted Senna S that happens pretty early on in the track. We should see 4 to 5 wide at the race start. It's pretty wide. There's some runoff. So like people spread out and they try to get by however they can. So I think two things to look for. Whatever tire people are starting on is going to be a telltale sign of how fast they get off the line and how fast they can get around somebody into the first two corners. And I think through those first two corners, we should see 2 or 3 wide as well. They're wide enough and they're shallow enough turns that we could keep some cars together without them running into each other.
It's a sprint weekend.
It is.
Yeah.
I forgot about the sprint. Yeah. Good call.
So that's fun. Makes it a little more interesting.
Well, now there's
night.
just something to do. Yeah, there's something to do the day before the race. That's really
Yeah.
exciting. I love that. I can't wait for 6 sprints next year. I know people are going to hate the 6 sprint thing, but I'm like pumped on the 6 sprint thing.
I'm same way. Give me quali on a Friday, sprint on a Saturday,
We
race on
don't
a
need
Sunday.
3. Who needs 3 fucking practices? The car is going to
Amen.
perform the same. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. All right. Anyways, Lewis is going to be looking to get his win here for a couple reasons. 1, he needs the win for his stupid record. 2, so does Britain. 3, he won last year. It could be worth betting. It could be worth betting for him. Do you remember the race at all? Did you?
Oh yeah.
This was like a straight up duke. Like they were like duking it out back and forth, back and forth. There was like 3 pass attempts by Lewis over 15 laps. Like Max took it, gave it back. Hamilton took it, gave it back. It was
Max
like
forcing him way off the track at turn
they
4.
were like making some hard ass like lines that just no one would in their right mind have ever made if they were just in like the 6th or 7th position. It's just because they were so far out in front. Yeah. Wouldn't it be fun to see the reverse of last year's race this year if Mercedes maybe can figure some shit out between now and
it'd be incredible.
Yeah,
it would be so fun. That last 2021 was incredible, instant classic. I'd love if we could get something like that. Max, something's got to happen to Max. Whether it's he gets spun out in the sprint and finishes 18th in the sprint, or has a failure of some sort. Something has got to happen to Max for this race to be interesting, unfortunately.
You say that, and I'm thinking at the same time also too, like something's got to happen to Ferrari because Mercedes is hunting for second in the constructors. They closed the gap by 13 points from last week. So now they're only 40 points behind Ferrari in the constructors.
Wow.
So if, say, something happens to Max and Mercedes can slide into a 1-2 or another 1-3 type scenario, and Ferrari isn't there for some reason, we're looking at like an interesting end of season race again, like down to the line. And that could be kind of fun, I think.
Yeah.
So,
and I saw this morning, Lewis is 15 points behind Russell.
Oh,
yeah. He's clawing away at him. Like the second half of the season, Lewis is just chipping away at Russell. So that'll be interesting too. Speaking of which, before we get off this topic, this is totally off topic. Did you see in that like NASCAR, whatever the fuck, some oval race? They looked like NASCARs. I know nothing about NASCAR, so I want to say this was like the level below NASCAR. I don't know what the fuck you would call that, nationwide or
something like a stock car B or something. Yeah, I got you.
But it was like the last lap, there's like 2 turns left, and this guy is back in like 8th, and he had to get up to 4th or something to get into a playoff or a shootout or whatever the fuck they're doing. And he pins it against the wall and just fucking lays the throttle wide open and slingshots himself around. And dude, he passed like 6 cars in like one corner.
I did see this.
Crazy.
I saw this because the comment was in PC Gaming, and it was like me on the last lap of the race hoping I can slingshot it into first place. And I was like, what does this mean? And I watched the video 3 times, and if you watch it for a second, you're like, this guy's crashing. And it's like, no, if you watch it from the second angle, he goes flying past like 6 cars. It's
crazy.
I did.
Alonso retweeted it. Fernando Alonso retweeted it and put like, what a move or what a legend or whatever. He was all about it. It was great.
Yeah. That just goes to show like everybody has this whole thing about like how strategy actually works. And it's like, you don't know strategy until you're playing meta like that, where it's like the only strategy is to get in front. That's real strategy. How can I get in front?
That was awesome.
That makes my last point way less important, so I'm just gonna let that one go. I got nothing. Yeah.
Well, end on a high note.
Yeah. If you are still following the Grid Rivals League, which I know you're not if you're listening to this podcast, because there's only 5 people that started in it, and fucking 3 of them have quit, you lazy losers. We've got Mac 44 in second place, losing some ground. He's now actually 491 points behind the league leader, Drace, which Drace is actually a developer for Grid Rivals, so I'm not entirely sure that he isn't like inflating his numbers somehow with some developmental changes to his actual score. It's neither here nor there. I'm in 3rd place now, so I'm not complaining.
Nice.
Yeah, since you and M. Kolar 981 decided to stop drafting F1 teams, I've jumped up in the league. Yeah. I've got to issue a redaction to a comment we made in our last episode.
Okay.
It turns out that Latifi has not yet actually confirmed.
It's funny. I heard that too in an interview with him in the Mexico week.
Car attendance. And I was like, well, shit, bro, you got everybody pumped on it. Now you're going to be like, no, it's not true. It's like, well, now you got to do it because everybody's excited for you.
Yeah. Dude, it's so funny you said that because I heard it maybe it was like in the press conferences or something. I was listening to him and he was like, oh, nothing's confirmed. I'm like, shit, I said it on the podcast.
Yeah, I feel like the nothing's confirmed is just now a safe statement from anyone who's in any racing industry after all the shit that happened earlier this season with McLaren and everybody else. But yeah, I've got nothing for this week on the way out, other than like, if you've stuck with us this far and you're still listening to the podcast through the end of the podcast, we're so thankful for you. Like, it's been really, honestly, like a pleasure and an honor to be able to like sit and talk about this stuff with Brian and to have listeners who care and listen. It means a lot to us. So thank you for doing that and for being a part of this with us. It makes a difference. It makes a difference in our week. So thank you guys.
Amen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for telling your friends about us. We will see you for the Brazilian GP.
Yeah. Peace.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to F1 on the Rocks. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe now and watch for updates at f1ontherocks.com and on social at F1 on the Rocks.
Woo! Almost.